You're listening to an episode of the Churchill Storywork Project about Indigenous knowledge of human polar bear coexistence. This is a storywork research project where we explore Indigenous knowledge through storytelling with Inuit, Métis, Syeside Dene, and Swampy Cree knowledge holders in Churchill, Manitoba, Canada. In addition to producing academic research about Indigenous community members' knowledge of coexistence, we also created podcasts in the voices of the knowledge holders themselves. We primarily created the podcast by and for the community. However, we hope others learn from and enjoy them as well. My name is KT Miller, and this work was part of my Master's in Interdisciplinary Studies at Royal Roads University. I had the great honor of working with Cree elder Georgina Berg as a co-researcher on this project. We met over a cup of tea, and as they say, the rest is history. The Indigenous Knowledge Keepers of Churchill provided guidance and advice throughout all phases of this research, beginning with research design all the way through the dissemination of results. Knowledge holder and graphic designer Nakia McIver made significant intellectual and graphic contributions to this work, and if you haven't checked out the timeline on our website or in our supplementary material, it is Nakia's artistic and intellectual creation, and it is amazing. I also want to acknowledge and thank my supervisors, Dr. Michael Lickers, who is an Indigenous scholar in residence at Royal Roads University, and importantly suggested I use the Indigenous method of storytelling in this work. And Dr. Dominique Henry, a research scientist with Environment and Climate Change Canada, who provided support and guidance through the technical and emotional journey of this project. We are also very grateful to Polar Bears International and Environment and Climate Change Canada who funded this research. More information about this research can be found at churchillpolarbearcoexistence.com. This series includes 4 podcast episodes that explore 4 different time periods: the distant past, prior to the relocation of Indigenous people to present-day Churchill; the past, which was sort of the transition from more of a traditional lifestyle to a wage economy; the present, which is defined in our research as the tourism era; and the future. In episode 4, we explore the future. Knowledge holders had many visions for the future of human polar bear coexistence in Churchill, Manitoba, which synthesized into the 5 main themes includes: protect tourism as an important industry and economy, support proactive management and less invasive research, elevate Indigenous knowledge in research and management, improve bear safety education and awareness, and cultivate a culture of coexistence. We hope you learn from and enjoy the final episode, episode 4, of our podcast series.
It was really cool today, actually. I'm starting to notice at work, like, we'll be going across and our full crew, like the boat driver, the bear monitors, the tour guides, everyone is local. Like, I've known them my whole life, and it's a really nice change. Like, this is my 5th summer with Parks Canada. It's a really nice change seeing that over the years, because there would have been times where I might have been the only one from Churchill that went across.
Mm-hmm. That's what I really like. I noticed that a lot too, is that when I was like serving and doing bartending during bear season, it was also always a lot of out of town staff that were kind of leading the groups and sharing the stories. And now you're getting to see more local people in any kind of aspect of tourism. Like, having that knowledge there adds a whole nother level of conversation that you can have with guests.
Like, I give tours of a stone fort from the 1700s, and like, half the time people come over and they don't ask questions. They don't ask a single question about the fort. They literally just want to know, like, what it's like growing up here, like what I did for hobbies and stuff like that.
Tourism needs to be looked at more as an opportunity for young people, especially. I've always been asked by people, when am I going to get a real job? You know, putting yourself out there and you know, getting involved, you know, for your community and for your career. And you could make a really good living.
So we know the value of polar bears to to Churchill. We know it's significant. So that's why, it's important when we say what's the value of tourism to Manitoba, right?
Tourism is big business, and that's what can part of reconciliation that can bring us back.
Respect, meaning that the Bears were here before all of us. You know, they were here before Fort Churchill was here, before this modernized version of Churchill that we sit on is here. So we built in their way, right? And so there's no reason why we can't coexist, and I believe that it can be done respectfully, and that means that the bear always gets the right of way, from one end of town to the other. Like, let it do its thing, let it cross its path, unless of course it's a juvenile bear looking for trouble, then of course there needs to be some kind of management there.
One of the things that we've noticed over time is that, with conservation, like they just seem to be overly aggressive sometimes, in terms of how they're handling bears or steering bears out. Sometimes you got to do things differently and improve on how you manage bears. So, like for instance, whether they're using a chopper to move bears, sometimes it's it could affect or injure the bear how they move bears. So always got to be careful with that.
I still think we have a long way to go with promoting tourism in this town because, like a few years ago, I had this guy who was a South African filmographer or whatever, and he was on the back road and he was taking pictures of the bears along the coast there. And he said, the conservation came up and said, "Get out of here, get in your car." And he's had a lot of experiences in Africa with all the wild animals over there. And he found out I was the president of Chamber of Commerce, and he came to my shop and he said, "Can I have a talk with you?" And I go, "Yeah." He goes, it's not cool what's happening here in Churchill." And I go, "Well, what?" He goes, "Well, wildlife." He says, "I was out there taking pictures. I was a safe distance, from the bear. I'm not going to endanger anybody, the bear or myself." And he says, "Conservation came up and they basically threw me in my car and told me to get the F out of there. And it's 30 degrees and they come over with a helicopter and they start chasing that poor bear. And that poor bear was so hazed that he said that bear was staggering. He couldn't run in the heat like they were chasing him." He said, "There's got to be a better way to have conservation here and have people monitored that they can have a safe viewing thing and leave the animal alone." So I think it's very important that we still work on those things today.
Causing more stress, and just the way that knowing the way people personally react to stress, it can affect the way we sleep, the way we eat, the way our day-to-day life continues. I can only assume that it's probably the same for different types of animals and species around the world.
When we came together as a working group, getting people together, it was to improve on the coexistence of bears. So making sure that, conservation and how they're handling bears is improved and acceptable.
Yeah. But then the bears too, they're flowing to this way and Wapas Park is that way. Yeah.
What do you mean by that? Yeah.
Why don't they fly the bears back to Wapas?
Why are they flying them between here and Arviat?
Yeah.
And they end up probably in Arviat. Like, fly them back to where they came from.
How the problem bears when they take them out of jail and then they fly them north. I would like to know, is that really the best idea? Because I remember when Arviat didn't really have a bear problem. And now they have a bear problem. Is it because we're putting all of our bears there? Maybe there's a better spot to take them. Like maybe into the national park. Because that's a big area where people don't live. I don't know what the rationale is for taking them north versus taking them east, southeast.
So on the on the Polar Bear Smart Working Group, one of the recommendations is that if you're moving bears, move them south, right? You move them north, you continue that. Like Morris said, they're heading to Arvia. They know there's a dump there now. They know what's there. So it's just repeating what happened with the old dump that was here, right?
I know the next community north of us tends to blame Churchill for any bad bears that they get, because they do, ship the bad bears out. Should I guess?
We need to protect our tourism and get those bears flowing south.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I think it's important to remember that, like, even though conservation, like Jack and Donald have been doing this for so many years, they're still like basically risking their life every time they go to chase a bear to keep the community safe. And it's important that we're able to give them the space to do their job safely.
Like, I was gonna say, it's important. It would be important to like tell tourists and like guests to Churchill that we set boundaries for Jack and Donald and for the bears, other than people thinking this is a show for them to keep taking photos of. To know that it's serious business and there's like boundaries that needs to be known. I wonder what it's gonna be like when Jack and Donald like actually retire. It kind of makes me worried. Like,
Yeah.
I was actually just talking with my coworkers that they should have like some sort of apprenticeship program.
Yeah.
For the next Jack and Donald, it should be like local, like young local people following in their footsteps, because like realistically, like we see conservation officers like rotate through here like a revolving door, and out of everyone they're the two that stayed, and realistically a local is probably someone who will stay like they have for so many years.
I also think like exactly, like just to kind of like add more to what you just said, Antonina, I think like, it's like a local invested interest. Like they have, like this person would most likely have the invested interest of like their community knowing how they need to keep safe.
It's even like sometimes I call Bear Alert and I'm like, I'm at Patricia's house. Like I don't say like 57 Bernier Street. And
Yes.
I could tell when it's not a local who answers the line, because then they're like, where? And I'm like, 57 Bernier. I'm like, they'll know, just tell them.
yeah.
I don't know about environmentally wise, if it's gonna, with the ice conditions. You see, tourism's probably just only gonna get bigger and bigger. I do see a lot of people from down south putting a group together, coming up, rent a van, go out, and there's somebody I've never seen before carrying a shotgun, or a group of photographers will get out there, and they get like super, super close, and then you're almost kind of watching them too. Or if somebody sees you with a gun, they say, "Oh, this guy's got a gun. I'm gonna keep going a little closer." But I think if they should try to regulate that a little more, because someone's gonna get hurt if they just free for all of it, or some sort of regulation.
So they do a good job of keeping us safe, but I think sometimes it's the bears that are at risk now, because they're being exposed to people and
Well, like tourism is blown up so much. It's crazy.
And then I guess also, like a lot of my friends eat polar bear meat. Like I've eaten it too. And it's very important for people up north, like as part of their diet. So I do recognize that some bears do have to be drugged, but I think that it should be minimized. And then the mark recapture work. My background's all in science, right? So I think that that probably is important work, and collaring can give you a lot of information, but does it actually have to be done every year? Or could it be done every 5 years instead. Because that's a lot of bears being drugged.
The collars and the tranquilizing and taking samples of, putting them down to sleep to take more samples, more like year after year after year they do that. How many years they've been doing that?
And there's a few advocates out there that says, okay, my people still eat polar bear. Mm-hmm. That's our culture. Mm-hmm. Not for you to discriminate about it, but what you're putting into those is also being transferred to us.
Mm-hmm. So what haven't they found out in 1970 that they're still trying to find out today? I don't understand that.
Yeah, I find that the researchers aren't really approachable, meaning that they have their mindset already on their research, and they're kind of like a tunnel vision. Mm-hmm. They don't really want to hear what other people have to say about it. They see through a mom and two cubs. So they tranquilize the mom. Now the mom, and they're not totally asleep. Mm-hmm. Now those two babies haven't been tranquilized yet, and they're traumatized. Mm-hmm. What happened to mom? Mm-hmm. They're just probably okay, she's waking up thinking, where's my babies? Mm-hmm. What happened? Mm-hmm. To me, it's still trauma. Mm-hmm. And of that trauma, what actually did you get from it? Yeah. Mm-hmm. What information was so vital? When you do see collars, it stands out. Mm-hmm. And I said, you natural. Think that nowadays with all the technology, they tag their ears, why can't that tracker be in its ear?
Yeah. Well, you can track a dragonfly. They could put a tracker on a dragonfly that small. Why can't a tracker go on a polar bear that small?
Yeah.
You know what my dream problem solver would be is to have a sanctuary in Churchill where orphan cubs can go. You have a little area. I don't know where, but just a little area where your orphan cubs can go until they're old enough to survive on their own, because it's going to go out onto the ice and,
do what the polar bear does. Instincts.
Yeah.
And it's got to grow up just like a child. Mm-hmm. Child learns how to walk, falls down and gets up again and continue.
Mm-hmm. Rather than sending them to a zoo where they are stuck in a little compound all day, or the bears in Winnipeg are so close to the seals, that's like dangling a carrot in front of you. Mm-hmm. I'm sure they smell them. Mm-hmm. I don't know if they know they're supposed to hunt them because they've grown up in the zoo, but they must smell them and wonder what smells so good.
Let's look in that cheeseburger.
Yeah, and they're fed vegetarian food there.
Lettuce and
are they actually being? Do they have they ever tasted what they're supposed to be eating?
Oh my goodness!
Yeah, it's just basic. If you think about it, it's just like taking a child from their home and basically this is your new home. This is where you're going to stay.
And everything's foreign.
Yeah, everything's foreign. Nothing's going to be the same. You can relate to, residential school. Here's a piece of wildlife that was free. And everybody's saying, oh yeah, but they're giving those bears a fighting chance. I would rather nature take its course.
What it comes down to is really thinking things through, getting the right people around the table and being proactive instead of reactive, because the end all is the polar bear always pays the price.
So if you look to the future for the bears, what do you think it's going to look like?
Well, with global warming, they're always talking about on the radio, it don't look good for anybody, not just the polar bears, a lot of other animals,
I'd like to see that they're still here, and we're still, seeing their beauty.
Making sure that
with research and science and laws that the province puts in, all these acts, is that they are going to make sure that the Indigenous are around the table, because we have traditional knowledge from our grandparents, our great grandparents, our ancestors, and that's knowledge that you're not going to find in books. You have to come to the community. You have to talk and engage with the community.
Like, just even in the school, I don't know how much information they do in the school on polar bears, you know. I don't know, like, even not like information, not just for our visitors, but for our children who like to play outside in the evening, and you know, like, you just never know when that polar bear will saunter through town, you know. And just to have that information for our children.
So they do it like once a year, and they usually do it in October when it's safety month.
Yeah.
You know, but they should be doing it once a month.
Yeah.
Talk about
Just
what are the bears doing now.
Repetitious, eh?
Yeah.
So I think that kids maybe don't hear stuff the first time they're told. So maybe it should be something that's done like at the beginning of the year. In September, and then maybe again once more right before bear season.
Yeah, I think the tourists need to be educated more.
They do.
They need to learn.
Well, they used to have those bear talks for newcomers, and I haven't heard of any since before COVID. For tourists, for construction workers that come into town.
For anybody, really.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, even if we just wanted to go have a refresher, maybe there's some new information that they could share with us, but I haven't heard of any of those in a long time.
If they think that they're big and clumsy and they can't run, they could run.
They can
really
run.
fast.
My nephew found that out. We were watching a bear outside our house when we stayed by Willow Park, and Ryan and Lewis were upstairs watching the bear. And conservation scared it, and it just bolted, and Lewis is like, holy smokes, Auntie, did you see how fast that bear can run? I said, that's why I always tell you, don't ever think you can outrun a bear, because you can't.
They're fast, and they could climb. They're
Yeah.
really good climb. So those polar bear talks should probably be happening more often, you know.
And part of that naturally is the whole aspect of education, making sure that that factor is important, so that you minimize, bear attacks, and what's Churchill going to look like 30, 40 years from now?
I just think, like, education and safety for visitors. Some people come not purposely ignorant, but just there isn't a lot of resources ahead of time to kind of teach them things like, please don't go walking there all out on these random roads by yourself.
Yeah.
Cape Mary is not a walkable road, although it seems very close on the map.
Even like if there's like plane announcements during like the busy tour seasons.
More general, not only just about polar bears, but about this entire place. Like, there's so many dangerous things about it that we unknowingly have just like adapted to living with.
Yeah, I think like a lot of visitors get kind of sidetracked by the beauty of everything. They don't realize the danger that can come with it. And kind of like what Nikki mentioned before, like knowing that like the water here has taken lives before, even like recently, like just a few years ago, like it can be scary.
One of the safety things could be that you don't lure a bear with food or leave food somewhere.
It's like scary too, because in that moment they're thinking about tourism, but they're not thinking about like, say, the security guard at the complex who works till whatever time in the morning and has to walk home from work after, but alone in the dark, like.
Yeah, or the bears that are getting conditioned that if I go near town, there could be food or there could be that. That's why they don't feed the bears in the bear jail. Someone had asked, like, do they feed them in there? And I was like, no, or they get conditioned to love Jack and Donald and love town when they should be scared of them.
Those signs have become a souvenir.
Right.
That's what that is.
Yeah.
Oh, I want one of those. Okay, I can get a badge over here with that same.
Right.
You know,
Mhm.
they become a souvenir.
Yeah.
It doesn't, to me, it doesn't look serious.
Right.
You know, it doesn't. Nobody's taking it serious anymore.
And then, you know, when are they going to take it serious? When there's something fatal happens? Because it's coming. It's definitely going to come with one of these tourists one of these days. Yeah, I said, why couldn't we hire somebody? Hire 2 people. One the train station and one the airport. So everybody that comes off the train, you give them a safety briefing, you give them all the information that they need to do their tour, and then, you know, it's just like a welcoming too.
Yeah, yeah.
To have somebody there, like an ambassador to Churchill, you know?
But I think if there was more, well, this day and age, you do a little video and TikTok, social media is just, you know, pump out a 1-2 minute video, just play it all the time, and then, you know, if you see it on your phone all the time, it'll eventually start sinking in. Maybe a little more, a little more social media stuff on it, I think, polar bear safety.
We always think of what are we leaving, you know, our children, our grandchildren, and just like there's 7 sacred teachings, it's been said that you're always thinking 7 generations behind you, knowledge-wise, where you are present, and what it looks 7 generations moving forward.
We are kind of in a good direction now. I feel like better than before, but definitely like incorporating more locals and like local knowledge is key. I think a big emphasis is not only local but like Indigenous knowledge as well, like especially like the people who have lived here for years and years and like different generations of families, and even people like the Inuit who have a totally different relationship with polar bears than say like the Cree might have, and just like learning from the different perspectives, and that really ties into knowing what's dangerous and what's not around town.
But I believe all animals need to be treated with love and respect, you know, even though we eat them, right? Like we harvest them. But so we harvest our animals as quickly as we can and we share, because Indigenous culture is sharing. But with polar bears, I think that they're a real spiritual animal, you know, and they're part of our ecosystem, and I think that they're, you know, you can see, because Indigenous people, the connection to the land is through the animals, right? And we watch these animals and we watch the polar bear rise, and we're all concerned about their future, and I think that it's up to us, you know, to make sure that we're doing our part, to make sure that the conservation continues and that these animals are around here for my grandchildren and my great-grandchildren and my great-great-grandchildren, because Churchill's so special.
So the coexistence thing is pretty critical. So, and it's quite unique. So I think the community's pretty proud of this being dubbed, polar bear capital of the world. But again, we've got to do our part to make sure that we're improving on it.
Thank you for listening to the 4th and final episode of the Churchill Storywork Project about Indigenous knowledge of human polar bear coexistence. Our thanks to the Indigenous knowledge keepers of Churchill who co-created, provided guidance, and contributed throughout this research: Florence Hamilton, Patricia Kandrian, Catherine DeMules, and Georgina Oman. This work would not have been possible without the blessing and contributions of additional knowledge holders and elders in the community: Nikki Clace, Dave Daly, Wyatt Daly, Brian Gulick, Jill Larkin, Antonina Kandrian, Heather Spence-Patello, Michael Spence, Morris Spence, Solly Norman Spence, Leroy Whitmore, and Eva Yassi. Our thanks to the entire community of Churchill for the support of and engagement with this project. Fundamental direction during the initiation of this research was provided by Jeff York, Evan Richardson, and Helen McEwen. Our gratitude to the Polar Bears International team for providing significant logistical and technical support. Once again, my name is KT Miller, and this research was part of my Master's in Interdisciplinary Studies at Royal Roads University. I am so deeply grateful to the many people that made this project possible. Our co-authors on this project include Georgina Berg, the Indigenous Knowledge Keepers of Churchill, Nikia McIver, Dr. Michael Lickers, an Indigenous scholar in residence at Royal Roads University, and Dr. Dominique Henry, a research scientist at Environment and Climate Change Canada. A big thank you to Polar Bears International and Environment and Climate Change Canada for funding this work. More information about this research can be found at churchillpolarbearcoexistence.com.